So the White House is now working on a plan B to bail out millions from their student loan debt, despite the Supreme Court striking down President Biden's plan just last week. Within just hours of the decision, the president announced he would find a way to cancel student debt through the Higher Education Act. Mark Thiessen, former speechwriter to President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor, joins me now. Mark, thank you so much for talking to us. First, I want your reaction to the president trying to essentially circumvent the Supreme Court's ruling by canceling student loan debt through an alternate legal authority. He does have the right to do this. Is it right or wrong?
Well, he doesn't have the right to do it. And he shouldn't be. He's not just circumventing the Supreme Court. He's circumventing Congress. I mean, think about this. Where does Joe Biden get off thinking that he has the right to spend $500 billion of taxpayer money by executive fiat? The Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse. Congress is the only body that's authorized to spend money. And so what he's trying to do here, you know, the left accuses Republicans and the Supreme Court of trying to undermine democracy. There's no greater threat to democracy than the idea that the President of the United States can, with the stroke of his pen, spend $500 billion of our tax dollars without going to the people's elected representatives. And, you know, keep in mind, when he announced this, the Democrats had unified control of government. They controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House. He could have gone to the Democrat-controlled Congress and asked them to do this. And you know why he didn't? Because he didn't have enough Democratic votes to pass this. Right. So he bypassed the Democrat-controlled Congress and tried to do this with the stroke of his pen. That's unconstitutional.
Yeah, no, totally. The bottom line is the reason the court sided against him, as most always does in a case like this, is because the president abused his executive power, quite frankly. I mean, billions of dollars of taxpayers' money to pay off debt relief without the consent of Congress, and he thought he would get away with it. Listen to Nancy Pelosi herself back in 2021.
People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress.
There's an ABC News poll which shows 45% of Americans support the Supreme Court's decision to strike down Biden's student loan forgiveness program. 40% disapprove of the decision. Rather than coming out and fighting a ruling that's already been ruled, why doesn't the president instead focus on a solution, such as putting pressure on colleges to reduce inflated tuition costs, rather than deflect by sending the message to students that it's okay to be putting off paying for college?
Well, of course, forgiving the loans would have the opposite effect. It would inflate costs because this has the exact opposite effect. And also the other thing is, look, Biden, he's going to rail against this, but he should be pretty glad that the Supreme Court struck this down, because this plan would be inflationary. So the biggest problem he has going into the 2024 election is inflation. People are mad. He has I think, 34% approval of his economic policies. Pouring $500 billion, $500 billion into the economy of free government money would increase inflation. Even Jason Furman, who's an Obama economic advisor, said that it was reckless to do that in the midst of runaway inflation. So, you know, it's probably better for him and for his reelection the Supreme Court did him a favor and stopped him from pouring $500 billion into the economy in the midst of this inflation.
Yeah, totally. And if you asked Biden, though, inflation doesn't exist, and with his Bidenomics plan, they love to tout the fact that, you know, wages are up. Well, it doesn't matter because prices are up even more. So people aren't really making any money or extra money in this economy. NBA legend Charles Barkley, I want to turn to the affirmative action ruling by the Supreme Court. He's rewriting his own will to make Auburn University more diverse in the wake of the Supreme Court's affirmative action ruling. He says he's going to leave $5 million to his alma mater, adding, "That's just my way of trying to make sure Auburn stays diverse." After that ruling yesterday, my phone was blowing up. I was talking to my friends and said, I need to make sure black folks always have a place at Auburn. Here's where this is a problem. Affirmative action was meant to diversify colleges, right? But it ultimately singled out applicants based on their race rather than a merit-based system. And then those who were more qualified to be accepted into top universities were instead discriminated against because of skin color. How is this a good thing for the Charles Barkleys and other prominent black Americans to be sending this message?
I actually think it is a good thing, and I'll tell you why. I think it's one thing for colleges to discriminate against people on the basis of race. It's entirely another for someone like Charles Barkley to take his money and say, I want to help black kids get an opportunity to go to college by providing them with scholarships to get into school. Affirmative action was the wrong solution, but we have a major problem in this country of racial disparities in education, particularly in secondary school and elementary school, where, and the reason for that is because millions of black and brown kids in this country are stuck and trapped in failing public schools because the teachers' unions won't let them have the same choices that affluent white parents have to choose their schools. So we need to lift black and Hispanic kids up. The way to do it is not through more discrimination. It's by creating opportunities and improving the education system.
And I think it's great that he's creating opportunities, but also it's sending an underlying message that basically without affirmative action that blacks are not going to get equal opportunity when it comes to college or universities and getting into colleges, when during the last 19 years of affirmative action, a lot of people suffered and did not get into colleges because of their skin. So it's a free-for-all. It's supposed to be equal opportunity for all, regardless of your race. But Mark Thiessen, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.